Hello and welcome to all our attendees of the Silicon Trust ID Technologists Seminar. My name is Steve Atkins and I'm the Program Director of the Silicon Trust. Today we're hosting this year's final seminar, which today is dedicated to new ID technologies, from industrial tokens to international travel. Now, we've become very comfortable with the term identification, be it digital or non-digital, and the use of both online and offline verification and authentication of a person's ID. But technology and practical implementation in this field does not stand still. For instance, where we once saw ID as a means to verify people, we now also use the same technology to verify objects and items too. Now, emerging markets require emerging security solutions. Sectors such as the Industry IoT or digital and software rights management need to protect and secure massive amounts of sensitive data and limit logical and physical access only to those who are authorized to access such data. While in the field of international travel, we're moving from practical documents to digital documents and looking to biometric technology for physical access across borders. And changes such as this have an impact not only on processes, but on people as well. In this seminar, we want to examine the change of thinking, technology, innovation, and the effect that these changes can bring to end users that are recurring within the area of ID tokens and biometrics, be they private, public, or industrial based. This time, we're broadcasting live from the Vibu Systems campus in Karlsruhe. So please join me in welcoming speakers from Vibu Systems, Yubico, Infineon, Cryptovision, and Mühlbauer ID Services, as each company brings their unique point of view to this topic. We'll hear how they're approaching their subject, and what their discoveries and recommendations are, from industrial Internet of Things device authentication to bringing eID to regional communities, and from digital identity tokens to seamless travel through biometric technology. Each has a story to tell and lessons that can be learned. We'll be joined today by Oliver Vinzenried, who began his entrepreneurial career immediately after completing his studies and focused on electronic and ASIC design, hardware, microcontroller, and embedded application development for consumer electronics, automotive, and industrial engineering. With Marcellus Buchheit at his side, he founded Vibu Systems in 1989 and remains the company's CEO to this day. Also joining us from Vibu Systems is Gunther Fischer, Senior Consultant, Licensing and Protection. Gunther has decades of experience in the software industry under his belt and now advises software publishers on planning and implementing protected software systems. His specialty is cybersecurity applied to the IoT world, and he addresses its unique challenges by facilitating the introduction of know-how and tamper protection techniques while enabling new business models at the same time. No stranger to these seminars is Markus Musenbacher, Head of Product Marketing for Digital Identity Solutions at Infineon Technologies, and he's responsible to drive the strategic definition of chip hardware and software solutions and customer communication. He holds a master's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Graz, Austria, and more than 20 years experience in the smart card business. Also joining us today for the first time is Per Erngard, Director Solutions Engineering EMEA at Yubico, Sweden, and has worked in the IT security arena for more than 25 years, mostly in the areas of IAM, PKI, SSO, and application security. Per has also talked about security in radio and podcasts, as well as co-written an IT security book. And back again for his second stint at our seminars is Mühlbauer's Lutz Richter. Lutz is head of information systems at Mühlbauer ID Services GmbH, and he completed his studies at the University of Applied Science for Technology and Economics in Dresden. He's been with Mühlbauer for 20 years now and is responsible for the development of identification management systems, e-government, and entry-exit systems. And last, but by absolutely no means least, we have Adam Ross from Cryptovision. Adam's an IT security professional with 2 decades of experience. As government identification specialist, Adam's been actively involved in several national identity initiatives around the world where he advises enterprises, government ministries, and development agencies on issuance of electronic identity documents and delivering electronic government services. His expertise is in public key infrastructure used to secure and validate machine-readable travel documents and the integration of cryptographic hardware tokens into effective cybersecurity postures. Now, the presentations from today's speakers can be found on the Silicon Trust seminar webpage and available for download from tomorrow, as well as the opportunity to watch the seminar again. There will, of course, be an email with all the pertinent details sent out to all attendees after this event. I'm now going to hand over to Oliver by saying thank you for having us here today, Oliver. And now the screen is yours.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. I'm very proud to host this Silicon Trust webinar today, partly at the Vivo Systems campus at Karlsruhe. And I'm as well proud to be able to introduce Vivo Systems to all of you. So the screen you see behind is one of the two buildings that are one behind the other at our headquarters in Karlsruhe. So a few words about Vivo Systems, beside the introduction from Steve. Thank you very much for that. This Vivo Systems founded in 1989, headquartered in Karlsruhe. We have subsidiaries in the US, in China, in Japan, sales offices additionally all over Europe, currently about 140 people and more than 50% export share, and that is only the direct export share. So if we take into consideration that our international customers in Germany are exporting themselves, our export rate is sure above 70%. So we hold several international patents. We are very active in research and development collaborations. We have an active role in standardization and industry associations certified according to ISO 9001 and 27001. So envisioning digital sovereignty through strong collaboration is our vision. The future belongs to pioneers whose innovations bring added economic value and tangible benefits while proving to be sustainable, fair, and ethical. Vivo Systems' contribution to a smarter economy, a respectful digital society, and a healthier environment. That's our goal. And to do that, and we believe in really innovation and digital sovereignty through collaboration, is our House of IT Security and IT Security Club, which I will explain in a few minutes. So what are we doing? Vivo Systems' slogan is perfection in protection, licensing, and security. And our products and solutions are always sold to manufacturers of intelligent devices or independent software vendors. And we do protection. That means protection against reverse engineering, against counterfeiting. We do licensing. That is the most important part. That allows manufacturers to define which features, which functions in the product can be used by his users and how the users needs to pay for that. So pay one time, use forever, like in the past when you buy a machine, for example, or to have some pay-per-use or subscription license models for the product or some features of the product. And our last topic, security, is not general IT security, but it's security for the protected software or protected device so that it's able to do only updates from the original manufacturer, which are not manipulated, or to make sure that configurations are also done only by authorized people. So we have a comprehensive solution or total solution that runs on many processor platforms, PowerPC, ARM, x86, MIPS. We support a variety of operating systems and embedded systems, server systems, PC-based systems up to the cloud. And additionally to that, the back-end processes to integrate the key deployment, the license deployment into the business process of our customers. Our goal is to be technology leading in that area, and we do a lot of research and development, which I told before, on future topics, for example, trustful artificial intelligence and post-quantum cryptography. So that's our contribution to people, environment, and society. And the goal is to establish CodeMatter as a de facto standard for licensing. 3 samples for innovation. We won the German Innovation Award in the last year for our CodeMatter Cloud solution, where you have something like a scalable, high-performance dongle in the cloud. We won the German Innovation Award in this year for our protection for server-side and client-side JavaScript applications. And a sample for cooperation is our Pluribox protection scheme that has been developed together with Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, KIT, and FZI, where we show that the protection is unbreakable, of course, with some assumptions, and that due to the protection, we don't add additional bugs into the protected software. And every mechanisms we use are compliant with Kirchhoff's principle. So we don't hide what we are doing, but we keep the cryptographic keys secret, that's all. Yeah, so that's good sample for cooperation. And that leads me to our House of IT Security and our IT Security Club. So we invested in Karlsruhe in 2 buildings with 8,400 square meters each, and in our second building we rented out to companies working in the area of IT security, and we established about 1,300 square meters for the IT Security Club, and that is a kind of co-working area but focused to IT security. So all the people working there need to work somehow on IT security so that they can benefit from the exchange with each other. And additional to that, high-end working places and the focus on the IT security, we add an innovation manager that is doing innovation workshops with the companies working there, the people working there, but not limited to that. So IT Security Club companies can become IT Security Club members even if they are not using a working space there. They try to find the right partners to set up funded R&D corporations, and the idea is to bring the IT security in Germany, in Europe, to push that and to help that on the way to digital sovereignty. So you see some pictures of the IT Security Club. This is an area in the upper floor. This is the open ceiling in the middle part where you come from the ground floor to the upper floor. Yeah. So all in all, it's a high quality workplace with where everything is inclusive. So people don't need to take care about any investment. They just need to bring their computer and their own equipment and can start working immediately in that IT security area. And we do a lot of cooperations here with the local research and development institutions like KIT, like Fraunhofer, IOSB, like Forschungszentrum Informatik. So far so good for the company. A few, maybe that you better understand what Webu Systems is doing, and we are using security controllers as one means to store our CodeMatter license containers with the cryptographic keys. Is some use cases is always the best to understand. So CodeMatter is widely used in industrial automation. So it doesn't matter if you have an industrial control unit from Siemens, from BNR, from ABB, from Phoenix Contact, Rockwell Automation, Codesys. CodeMatter is used to protect the IP, to protect the source code in the development tools, to protect the runtime code on the PLC, and to be very flexible in licensing of features. Second use case is in the automotive industry. When you go with your car to a repair station, normally they put a cable and with a connector to your car to see the error messages. So this diagnostic software solution and widely spread solution is ACtronic from Bosch, which is licensed and protected by CodeMatter with a subscription model with the repair stations. Other use cases in automotive is engineering tools, measurement equipment, like vector informatics devices or DSpace software, which is protected and licensed with CodeMatter technology. Going to the machine making industry, Trumpf is using CodeMator in their development tools for the work preparation, the PC-based CAD tools, but as well in the machine for secure authentication of the machine, for license feature activation in the machine. And you might have read in the press that Trumpf is also establishing new business models, like a paper parts model for their big metal machines. And that is something that can be handled with CodeMator for the licensing. Another use case, a machine maker from Japan, DMG Mori, where CodeMator is integrated in the Celus platform. This is an example of standard PC software for architects, so CAD in the office area, like Archicad from Graphisoft or Allplan, both Nemetschek companies that have a highly modular software and offering subscription-based models for their software usage as well. A very nice use case that integrates artificial intelligence in the camera. So the pre-processing algorithms running in the industrial vision camera are running and protected by a CodeMator ASIC. So that's a security controller that is embedded in the camera, running the CodeMator firmware to protect the AI mechanisms and algorithms in the camera. Another nice use case that I like to explain is digital computer radiography equipment from Agfa. That's expensive equipment for hospitals in India, for example, that are not the top private hospitals, but in the second row, maybe in the countryside. It's more or less not affordable to buy these machines. So Agfa set up an easy payment scheme and installs these expensive machines for a very low price in the hospitals, and then is doing a prepaid model for using the machine, either on a monthly based or on a base per diagnosis. And so at the end, it's a win-win-win situation. It's a win for the manufacturer of the computer radiography equipment that can produce and install more machines. It's a win for the hospital that can have this high-quality diagnostic systems. And it's a win for the people living in that area, because if they collect the money to get this diagnostic from the hospital, they can get it. If the hospital has no equipment, then there is no chance. So when here all these new business models with subscription-based or pay-per-use-based licensing models work only if they are set up in a way that there's a benefit for all parties. But then it's really a benefit and a high flexibility. Yeah. The last sample I think is for dentists. That's machines, leading machines from Dentsply, Sirona. Some of you might have seen that already at their dentist. They do fillings for your teeth, and these ceramic fillings are grinded out of a ceramic block, a ceramic block that is on the slide. And the manufacturer of these systems is using CodeMator for 4 reasons. Number 1, protect the machines against the competing vendors, so protect their IP, their intellectual property. Number 2, to define which features the dentist can use. He can buy different levels of the software, for example. Number 3, they do a pay-per-use model and count the number of ceramic blocks that are produced by that machine. And number 4, they protect the machine against tampering, against manipulation, with digitally signed configuration, with digitally signed software updates and firmware handled by the CodeMator system. Yeah, that's the samples. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope I could show a little bit what Vibo Systems is doing, what we understand of protection, licensing, and security. And I wish you a good remaining 2 hours with the following presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Would you mind releasing your screen? Thank you.
Of course.
To our attendees out there, we will start the main part of the seminar now. If you wish to ask questions, please use the Q&A button that you'll find at the bottom navigation bar. and we're going to start now. A slight little changes to the running schedule of our agenda. We're going to begin with Markus Musenbacher talking about digital identity tokens, first the foundation, then the future. So Markus, over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everybody. Welcome in our webinar. I want to give you some introduction in general to the technology which is applied in all the nice use cases which have been shown by Mr. Winzenried, and further on we will see additional use cases. So the amount of lives spent in a digital scenario is growing exponentially, using different devices for different applications like paying, identifying, verifying, and connecting with people as well as with objects. So all these applications are requiring hardware-based secured solutions with different measures as data encryption, multi-factor authentication, and identification. So what you see on this slide, different applications, you see different applications which are using basically the same security mechanisms in different form factors. The chip cards replaced paper documents. It is for a long time in the market and used for payment, electronic documents, and transport. So 1979, the first chip card was developed by Giesecke and Devrient. A major part of the evolution of hardware-based security is based on this chip card technology with regard to chip robustness, security, technology interfaces, and especially the contactless interface, which has to be reliable, and also standards like global platform, NFC standard, and Java card standard. Based on this technology, embedded secure elements have arisen. So first, it started with contact-based only interfaces, and contact-based cards are constantly decreasing as they have many disadvantages, mechanically especially, and contactless technology is still increasing, especially Corona triggered a big raise of this technology. And in addition, many new applications based on NFC are coming. So NFC enables several different form factors, as you can see here. So it is not only used for cards, but also for tags, for different applications. So for identification, for payment, different form factors. You even can pay with a ring. And there are other devices. Here is one example where it is used in combination with blockchain. So and just one new interface enables many additional use cases. And then the next evolution are embedded security controllers, and where you can find even more applications. The form factor might be a machine, a smartphone, a watch, or a USB token. So you have seen before plenty of examples. It's used in the industry and also for consumers. And with embedded security controllers, you see that also more interfaces enable additional use cases. So what is the main topic of our workshop today is USB form factor, which enables the usage for physical logical access as well as for IP protection, as we have seen before. And on the next page is the definition of a USB token. So it's a self-contained device, a USB stick or dongle. It represents the identity of a person or an object, and it connects the physical world to the digital world or digital twin. and it enables, in addition, digital services. And it has also additional interfaces. So on a dongle, there can be a USB interface, of course, also Bluetooth Low Energy, and also NFC interface. These are some application examples. So some we have seen already from Mr. Vincent Reed from Vibu, like IP protection, license tracking, but it's also used in enterprises and in governments for logical access and also physical access, and also to check code integrity. What is also available on the market are crypto wallets for custody of cryptocurrencies. It's used in CAM form factors, but also with USB dongles. So one important aspect which I want to go deeper into is security. So the attacks are growing every year in different classes. So we have different attack scenarios like manipulative attacks, observing attacks, semi-invasive attacks. And with this number of growing attacks, also the protection effort increases, and therefore also the chip technology and the measures against these attacks have to increase. And this is also enabled by secured security controller chips. So the main difference to standard microcontroller and the security controller is that the security controller has many measures. It's either sensors or more sophisticated technology, which has implemented measures against these attacks. And as Mr. Vincent Reed said before, we will have even higher challenges with PQC, post-quantum cryptography. And Infineon is also working on that to be prepared against attacks from quantum computers. So how can you prove this? So 100% security does not exist, because with a lot of effort and with a lot of money and time, it is theoretically possible to crack a chip. But the higher the security level is, the harder it is to attack such a chip. So it would then cost an amount of money and time, which isn't reasonable to take the effort to crack such a chip. So how to prove the security? The product for evaluation is evaluated by test houses. So there are many test houses like Dufati, Serma, UL, and many others. And the certification of the product finally proves that the product is secure to a certain level. The levels are defined by common criteria. Usually the level is CC ERL 6+ for security controllers. So this is all for all the form factors which I have shown before. And the evaluation testing also leads to an EMD approval, which is needed for payment applications. So this was all from my side, and I wish you a happy webinar with all the other presentations. Thank you.
Marcus, thank you very much. Thank you. As I said to the other attendees, if there are any questions, please use the Q&A format that you find in the navigation bar below. We don't appear to have anything so far, but I did want to ask Marcus, you still there? Oh, you are.
I'm still there, Steve.
Listen, you talk about using digital tokens to validate identity. How come we've never seen it used with an alternative to digital documents, or to the move on from, you know, physical documents. So for instance, I mean, if you could use a digital identity token for physical access, could you also use it for, I don't know, border crossings?
Sure, you could use it for border crossing, but you would need to change the whole infrastructure because it's not. It's done for NFC, and also you need to be able to read the optical information of the face and everything. But if the infrastructure is designed in a way that you can read the picture, and then that you also have, that technically it would be possible, but it's not so easy that you just change the form factor. Then you also always you also need to adapt the infrastructure, and this is a very important topic for a whole system to have the right partners and system integrators and customers who take care that the infrastructure fits to the technology and to the interfaces.
Just one final thing, just from my side. I mean, we see a lot of dongle based on USB, but it's the old USB standards. Do you know of any plans of using dongles based on the new USB-C?
Yeah, so also USB-C is available, as far as I know, also from Ubico. So I'm sure we will learn more from Per about that. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, USB-C is available in our case for the CM stick D or DM with flash on top as well.
Okay, cool, cool. Okay, so Marcus, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go back to Vibhu now, and I'm going to hand over to Gunther, who's going to talk about industrial IoT, or IIoT. Okay, Gunther, over to you.
Okay, thanks for the introduction, and also a very warm welcome from my side to the webinar. And I wanted to briefly go back to this USB-C question, and you will see it on the picture as well, so it already exists. Just to go into more details of what Oliver already explained, is that the CodeMeter technology is the basis for what we used to add the certificate functionality to the existing product family. And to better understand what the overall picture looks like, you saw a lot of examples how it's used in the field, is that you need to understand the overall integration of the different technologies that work together. So you can, for example, to check licenses and functions of an application, integrate the technology into your own application. And you can just check the license functionality and enable and disable functions inside of the application, which could be firmware or a real end-user application. Or you could even go a step further and encrypt the whole application and prevent allowed or not allowed duplication of the software, so that the software could be copied, but it could never be used, because the infrastructure doesn't allow to use it, because it is encrypted and cannot be used in an encrypted way without being decrypted before. And to do this fully automatically, instead of the distribution process, we have a central backend system that's called License Central, which takes track of all the different licenses that you ever issued and allows you to do updates fully automatically. And to do this in the overall picture, if you sell a product, you can integrate this backend system into your already existing backend infrastructure, like ERP system or CRM systems. So if you sell something, the license is just part of what you sell, and everything after you sold it will be done automatically, and you don't have to do anything manually anymore. So that's the fast forward view on how all of this works together. And since we already talked about secure elements, this is the overall product portfolio right now that we currently have in the hardware elements. So on the left side, you see the chip that is included in all of those different form factors, which is coming from Infineon, and the product of the Infineon secure elements in this area is called SLE or SLM 97. So it's available in regular temperature areas as SLE, and in high temperature in extreme conditions, it's available as SLM. But all of them have the same chip inside, and the firmware comes from Fibo Systems. Some of them, and the one in the middle you can see, is the one that is based on USB-C. So this one. Wait a second. This one is USB-C based. And all of them also have an offer to offer additional flash, to use the flash as additional storage to the secure element storage. So this is the overall portfolio. And now we come to the next situation. So this is the basics where we came from. And we had a third-party solution for some customers to also allow to use certificates in this infrastructure. And since the demand for this got higher and higher, we decided to implement this on our own. So now you can store certificates, X509 version 3 certificates inside of a CM dongle, and currently only in a dongle. We also have offers as secure elements in terms of cloud-based storage for the secure element, and also a secure encrypted file. But because this is very important to be able to have it in a highly secure environment, we only offer it currently in the smart card environment based on the hardware solution. So as you have seen in the previous slide deck, this is basically your identity, and it is used for that purpose. So just to give you a very brief recap of how all of this works. So the content of a certificate is you have a unique ID, which is the name of the issuer, the subject basically, or the serial number of something, something that is not changeable, which is protected by the certificate. And it also contains a public key. And that this certificate is valid is proven by an authority. And there are many ways how to do this, and you will see a couple of them afterwards. But it's important that the security authority is signing this certificate. And it has to be a trusted authority that is the root of the whole certificate of trust chain that is going along with this. So here's an example of how this could look like. So either you take a person or an object, and I have chosen to take a RFID reader in this case, which identifies itself, and it gets a certificate, and the certificate, most importantly, also has a validity date. So it is not valid forever. So because you have to renew it, something could happen to the certificate, and if somebody is misusing it, it is at least time limited. So, and all of this is basically handled in complex structures. If you have a lot of different devices or persons that you handle with all of those certificates. The most important part is the root certificate. This is something that you have to trust, and it doesn't have to prove its authority. So it's like the government. So you do not question if the government has the authority to do something. And then you can have an intermediate authorities. And then at the end, you have final certificates that can be verified going along the chain and check if all of those criteria that are needed from a cryptographic point of view, that the root certificate says, yes, this is something that I signed originally overall the whole chain. This is basically the whole concept behind it. So, and how does this work? Typically, in a regular consumer environment, you have pre-installed root certificates, and everything that is already pre-installed doesn't need to prove that it is coming from an authentic source, because it's all signed along the chain by this root certificate. But in the worst case, something wrong can happen. And I'll show you an example that it really happens, that the private key that is typically only available to the one who wants to have this certificate gets published. And if it's the root certificate, that's really bad. So here's just a couple of summaries. And the most important part is that you have to have a certificate authority that is trusted automatically, and that you have a signed version of a certificate with the private key of this authority, which proves that the public key that is going along with the certificate is a trusted or a trustful public key. And one of the big advantages having this in a certificate case to do the authentication is a password can be given away very easily. If you try to protect something with a password and somebody wants to get the password, either it's easy to be broken, or sometimes people really forward the password to somebody and then the whole protection is gone. But as I said, in the worst case, and even really very well-known companies can get into this situation, is if you publish your private key for your certificate root. And actually this happened to Dell. Dell basically pre-installed their root certificate in all of their machines, but unfortunately they also published the private key. And if you look into your Windows installation, for example, this is the reason why the eDell root is currently on the list of untrusted publishers, because everyone who wants to be a spyware or whatever, a virus, can use the private key, create a certificate that belongs to this e-root, and then it's easy to install it. Nobody asks you if you really trust this application. Just to give you an idea, it really happens. It's not just in theory. You can also revoke certificates either through a certificate revoke list, or you can also do this online and check the validity of a certificate if there is a global public player like Global Sign with the online certificate status protocol, if this is a valid certificate or not. So what are the usage scenarios? There are different types of certificates. You can limit them to specific functions like a server certificate or a VPN certificate or a communication certificate for UPC UA devices. And you can also use it, as explained before, to protect the integrity of code and data within software, which we already do with the previous implementations of this protection suites automatically. So where do you store the keys? So ideally, you store it in a physical token, like a secure element, as you have heard by Infineon. It's the most secure storage. But also, people tend to use just file versions of it and copy it into directories in file systems. This is, for example, done in many implementations on OPC UA. But it's easy to get access to those files inside of this file system. So, and to make the storage, so the secure element, available to all applications, you need to support a couple of interfaces. And this is the example what some of the existing applications already use. And this is what we support with the CodeMeter Certificate Vault, the new add-on for storing X509 V3 certificates. It's the PKCS11 interface and implementation. And it's also the Microsoft Crypto provider store to have the keys stored there. So there are some applications that are fixed to the different stores. If you write your own application, you can take advantage of both locations when you have access to it on, for example, Windows. And then the layer that we offer gives you access to the Vibu CodeMeter dongle, which stores at the end the certificate in a highly secure way. In addition to the two that you see here, we also offer an open SSL layer that allows you to access the same content through the open SSL libraries. So the deployment of the certificates are done in the standard way as we also deploy already licenses. So which means we have the licensor creates a license. In this case, along with the license, there is also a certificate. And then the standard mechanism to distribute the license is just leveraged in the same way as before. So we just have a secure way to exchange the information through encrypted files. And the certificate is also distributed in the same way. This is typically one of the key problems with certificates, the management of the certificates and deployment. And we just take this as an existing infrastructure and reuse the infrastructure to do the deployment. However, it is not 100% compliant to the textbook implementation. So in the textbook implementation, only the one who wants to have a certificate knows the private key. So if you look at this slide, let's say we have a device. The device wants to have a certificate that shows that it's a really trustful identity. Then it sends a certificate signing request with a certificate public key in it to the CA, and the CA at the end does a lot of checks if this is really a trustable information. So this is done physically. If you ask for a root certificate, intermediate certificate, typically though they ask you for a couple of documents and so on. And then after all of this identity check has been done, they sign the certificate with a private key. And then you get the signed certificate and import it into your certificate store. There are ways in between which are really not confirming at all to the standards. So you always send the certificate private key in files, and you also have a password where you protect some of those keys, which is then used to do the import at the end. But it is a very common way how to do this with self-signed certificates. And in our case, we have something in the middle. We have this token. The token has a serial number. The token also has a content. We create a dump of the content. The content then will be used, and the certificate information like the private key and the certificate part containing the public key gets inserted into this secure element. And then all the standard mechanisms that we have already in place can be used. So the difference is the private key is also stored into the secure element, which is not the case in the textbook world. To give you two examples of who is using this, we have one example in the financial industry, which is Diebold Nixdorf. Diebold Nixdorf is using this to equip their service technicians, to authorize them to use specific functions inside of the ATM. And they also use it to meet the PCI, so the payment card industry, DSS requirements to show that this is a unique identification mechanism. In addition, we also have a partner that is using it really for IoT devices, which is Balov, and this is a result of a research project that was financed by the German government. The research project is called IUNO, and Balov is using the certificate vault to secure the communication between the OPC devices, and also to verify if the RFID tag that was created by them is really authentic and is coming from them. So this is their use case, how they use it. And this slide just describes it in a very brief way how this is done. So the communication between the OPC UA devices is done in a secure communication using certificates like TLS communication. And then in the middle, this is basically the key aspect that shows it. They use the CodeMeter ASIC, which is the Infineon SLM or SLE 97, which is then used to store the certificate. And they also use this to have a secure communication between all their UPC UA devices. And they also verify if the RFID tag is really coming from them and is authentic from Baluf. So this was a very fast run through how this all works. And this is a matrix that shows what currently is supported with the CodeMeter certificate vault. So you can see this is evolving. So for example, the RSA algorithms in the first version have been limited by the 2048 key length, and the current version supports up to 4096. And as has been mentioned before, we also work on post-quantum technology. So there is a research project that is going on right now together with Infineon, which is called PQMet, which is just elaborating which algorithms are the best to use in this environment. And by this, I would like to thank everybody for listening and give it back to Steve.
So, Gunther, thank you very much. There's a couple of questions for you, a couple from me, and then we've had one which I'd also like your take on. Is CodeMeter certification Vault a standalone product?
No, it's a member and an extension to the already existing CodeMeter technology.
Okay, which platforms are supported?
It's the typical Windows standard, Windows embedded, Windows versions that are all based on x86 or 64 and 32-bit platforms. It's the typical Linux cases, so also x86 and also the ARM platform, and also all embedded Linux flavors that you can think of running on x86 and running on ARM.
Okay, you spoke very quickly about Crypta.
Crypta is the product that Diebold Nixdorf is using. So it's their own invention, and it's basically used by all their service technicians.
And how many would that be?
At the last time when we heard about it, it was 6,500 on a worldwide basis.
Okay, okay. And one final one, I got a text that came in. Is the communication between CodeMeter License Central and CodeMeter encrypted?
Yes, it's fully encrypted, and it's already used this way for all the other functionality that we already use. So we just reuse the infrastructure that already exists.
Okay. We also got a question that popped up on our Q&A section. He said, if one loses the dongle, what is the replacement process? Now, Per answered him, and he wrote, this is entirely up to the company process, but normally there is a backup dongle or other method that can be used until a new dongle is received from a help desk or similar.
In our case, for example, if he wants to renew something, and it's typically the case, so you limit the lifetime of the information. So in the Crypta case, for example, I think they have a 2-week lifetime. Next time when they need to access to get a expansion of the lifetime, we check the serial number of the device, and we could have put it on a blacklist before, and then the device is basically blocked.
Okay, so in all cases, if people are using dongles, you can get replacements as long as the original is blocked or yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, Gupta, thank you very much. Appreciate you taking time to present to us. Now, I am going to hand over to Per, who's telling us that not all MFA is created equal. Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, as you said, Steve, I'm really glad to be here. My name is Per Engard, and hopefully I can have your attention for at least 10 to 15 minutes to listen in when I talk about the interesting story of Yubico and the YubiKeys. And to show this a little bit is showing this picture. We say that we have security in our DNA. And it began long time ago, 250 years ago, when Agustin Ehrensvärd, a security engineer, built and designed the sea fortress outside of Helsinki to protect Sweden against foreign attacks. And it's today listed as the UNESCO World Heritage. And then 10 generations later, Jacob and Stina Ehrensvärd founded Yubico 2007 and invented the YubiKeys with the mission to protect everybody in our modern digital world. But Jacob and Stina also realized it doesn't work to do this for the whole world and be in Sweden. So they actually took their 3 kids and moved to Silicon Valley in 2011 because they wanted to be closer to the internet thought leaders and to make their vision happen. And today we have more than 4,500 businesses and almost 20 million YubiKeys are sold across 160 countries. So there's been good, strong growth. And we also have a global presence. We have employees in 13 countries, and the majority of our team is based in Palo Alto in the US, and the other part is in Stockholm, Sweden. We're also backed by top-tier investors, both in the US and in Sweden. And one of the most important things we have accomplished so far is that all leading platforms and browsers have made native support for the YubiKeys and the standards we have pioneered. But why should you use a YubiKey? This is something I want to highlight because many of the breaches are due to lost control over credentials, either phished or stolen. And I should say data breaches are one of the biggest challenges we have today. Especially now with all people working remotely, as it's been for the last 2 years. We have seen a sharp rise in phishing attacks and targeted attacks. The good thing is strong two-factor authentication, or MFA, has proven to be most efficient to protect against these threats. But not all MFAs are created equal. Why do I say that? I would like to highlight this by showing the picture of a fable of the 3 pigs. Based on the survey from Google a couple of years ago with more than 350,000 users and real hack attacks. So the 3 little pigs built their houses with different materials. It was straws and sticks and bricks. And the wolf came there, huffing and puffing, blowing until the first 2 houses collapsed. So should you be afraid of the big bad wolf? Yeah, maybe, depending on which authentication measures you're using. So if you look at the pictures here, to the right is the most secure one with the strongest authentication. And to be fair and to make things clear, hackers don't break in, they log in. Just to summarize so people see the actually presentation. This is the first one, just about Yubico. And I'm gonna move forward with that one. And then the next one is more related to phishing, as I talked about earlier. And then we have the picture of the fable of the 3 pigs, which I think I was almost done with. I was done with it as well, but showing that you're more secure as long as you go to the right side. And then I told you about this one when you came in and said, yeah, we can't see your presentation. Thanks for that, Steve. So what I said here was hackers don't break in, they log in. And that's what we have seen recently with a lot of big brands. So if we're looking for the next one here, these are the breaches for the last couple of 2 months or so. You might recognize some on Uber, Twilio, IHG, the Intercontinental Hotel Groups, and all of those brands have been breached, even though they had used MFA. But they used legacy MFA, such as SMS and OTP, which didn't help them at all. And now it's starting to get a buzz regarding legacy MFA and push bombing scenarios. Talks about that among CISOs in the US and also in the rest of the world. And MFA is starting to get on top of mind for C-star people right now. But also, these were successful breaches, which is scary to see, and there are a lot of others, of course. But here is another example, which is a more good one. It's Cloudflare. They were also attacked recently, but the difference was that they had YubiKey deployed to every person in the organization, and that stopped the attack. Even though it was actually 3 people fell for the phishing attack, but as they had a step-up authentication requirement, that was stopped by the YubiKey. You can read more about it on their own blog. They wrote exactly how things happen and all that. I won't go into it, and we don't have time to go into it either. Another thing I would like to highlight here is this one, which is Inside the Mind of an Ethical Hacker. It's a great example YouTube video made by Rachel Toback, the lady to the left. And she shows how they made a fake phishing attack and how it could be stopped with a YubiKey. You can search for it on YouTube. It's there. Just remember Inside the Mind of an Ethical Hacker. They show a successful attack, and they pretend to be the IT support calling a person, phishing him for the OTP code that he has, and insert it to get his credentials and login. And they also do an extra part after discussing a lot of how a phishing can happen. They also do a similar thing when the user has a YubiKey instead, and then they fail. Okay, so that's about a lot of what we are trying to solve with the YubiKey. So now let's look at the YubiKey instead. I'm not sure how many minutes I have, but I will try to speed it up. So here are our family of YubiKeys. We have the small ones to the right, the nano ones, USB-A and USB-C, as mentioned. There are both USB-A and USB-C tokens out there, dongles or whatever you like to call them. We have the ones that are a little bit bigger. It's the keychain form factor. We have those in USB-A, USB-C, but even Lightning, so it works with the iPhone, for example. And some of the keys where you see the small Wi-Fi symbol on them, they have NFC support, so they could be used with mobile devices. And all of the keys, they have a small golden disc or a touch plate on the side, and that is used to touch to show user presence, meaning that if you insert the YubiKey and log into something, we would like you to be sure that it's a person sitting behind the computer. And that is done with touching the YubiKey. We also have the YubiKey Bio, which is pretty much the same as the YubiKey. The difference is to use your fingerprint for authentication instead of a PIN. And the PIN is something you have, and it's not shared over internet. It's not sent away over internet. It's just used to unlock that specific YubiKey. And the good thing with the YubiKey is we support many different standards and protocols. For example, OAuth TOTP, PIV, the certificate that Günther was talking about, can be stored on the YubiKey. U2F, FIDO2, or even OpenPGP. And the multi-protocol keys are the black ones, except the YubiKey Bio. Then we have the blue ones, which is more consumer-based or consumer space keys, sell to end users, which has a limited functionality with FIDO2 and U2F. And at the far last one is the UBHSM, which is a thumbnail small hardware security module used to store, for example, root certificates that Günther was talking about as well. And it just fits in the USB port. It shouldn't be used for big transactional high performance things, but for root CA storage, it's perfect. And also, the good thing that we support so many standards are that there are many applications out there. You can just watch the big picture here and see, I guess you see applications of vendors that you recognize. And this is just a small portion of all the vendors and applications that implemented support for the YubiKey or supporting standards that are on the YubiKey. The main things the YubiKey code is supporting is more all organizations all over the world, different sizes, different organizations that want to modernize authentication. So the most common business scenarios or use cases, whatever you like to call them, is, and that started to be during the pandemic, of course, secure your sensitive accounts or remote workers, shared workstations, or mobile restricted environments. This is normally where the organization starts to use the YubiKey. Or if they have had smart cards before and they realize they can use a YubiKey instead and don't need to have the reader for the smart card, then the USB is perfect and the YubiKey works. And also later in the later stage, there are, of course, securing office workers, third-party contractors, and end users as well. And also, as we talked about earlier, it's important with government regulations, and the YubiKey supports FIPS, the CSPN, GDPR, PSD2, and also the leading standards, as I said, with FIDO, PIV, OAuth, and W3C. And the thing is that the YubiKey is so versatile that it could be used in many different scenarios. And given different levels of security, of course, when you move to the right of the picture, you're more secure than on the left side. But the YubiKey can be the bridge to your way to passwordless. And passwordless is the term Microsoft uses with Azure when you log in and don't need to use your password. You use their authenticator push app, or you use certificate-based authentication, or you use FIDO2, which is the one we have on the YubiKey. And also, it could be that you have a VPN solution that supports TUTP from the beginning. And then you realize, yeah, I can use the YubiKey for that one and later upgrade to, if the vendor is upgrading their product in new releases to U2F or FIDO2, that's a perfect use case to have the YubiKey. And then that YubiKey can follow you on other vendors and applications upgrading as well. We recently got a report from September, I think it was, conducted by Forrester on behalf of Yubico, where they interviewed some of our customers around the world. And yeah, it pretty much talks by itself. Return on investment for the YubiKey is incredible, 203%. Payback time is 11 months. And then you have the great benefit of stopping successful phishing attacks using the YubiKey, of course. That was really nice to hear. To try to summarize everything, as I said from the beginning, and as the presentation is, not all MFA is created equally. Yubico has tried to lead the innovation with strong authentication for years, co-creating the FIDO protocols, the WebAuthn, working with standard bodies such as NIST to evolve guidelines. We are laser focused on authentication and related innovations. So it's been our top priority with proven track record. And our mission actually has been unchanged since 2007 to make secure login easy and available for everyone. And if you look at the firmware and the supply chain for things here, our firmware is loaded and locked at the factory, which provides security by design. This means that it can't be updated or altered in the field by an evil person or anybody else for that matter. And it's also reviewed by third parties, so it's really secure. All of the products are developed in Sweden or in the US in a highly secure automation. And we have shipped almost 20 million keys to our customers around the world. We don't store any secrets on the key. The keys are empty when the user gets them, and they store their secrets on the key when they start using them, which is really, really important to know. And also, we have some unique services because we know hardware distribution comes with challenges. So we have invested in a global delivery, so we can deliver both to remote and in-office users. But also we have a range of personal services, buying options, both perpetual, so you buy the key and you own it, or subscription parts. Yeah, so thank you very much for having me here, even though there's been some challenges with the presentation. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I just have one question for you, which is probably unfair to throw it on you. But a lot of the use of dongles are used for access, for online access or app access or whatever. But I wonder, from your point of view as a person that's in this field, in the security field, Apple's new introduction of passkeys, coming from a FIDO-based standard, I believe. What's your view on this? I mean, the idea to use your phone to log into apps or to web stuff is probably only one step away from it becoming a kind of mobile dongle, for what a better word. Have you got anything you could comment on that?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I think it's great that Microsoft, Google, and Apple started to look at this. They're using the FIDO specification that we have been co-created and make it a consumer-based, easy-to-use solution instead of passwords. So I think that's great, but I don't think it's something that will be used that much for enterprises, because you don't want to have your trust plane stored in the cloud and trust Google, Microsoft, and Apple to have that. So I still think the FIDO2 and the security keys will be used for enterprises. But consumer base, yes, definitely could be interesting.
So basically having the data in the hands of, let's say, your employer is better than one of the large global conglomerates, yeah? Yeah, because then it's just there for one person. I don't know, if you trust them, please do. I think also, but I think it's really great because it highlights that it's needed. Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Okay, Per, thank you very much. We have to move on. Thank you for your resilience in actually working on this and coming back to us. Brilliant. Thank you. Adam, I'm gonna hand over to you.
Okay, great. Hopefully the screen sharing will work a bit better. Thanks for inviting us to the session. It's very nice to be here at the Silicon Trust and sharing a bit of knowledge with you guys. I have to admit, because I'm working from home, there is a risk of a furry invasion. I did not duct tape my cats to the wall in advance of the session. So if there is a furry feline that pops up on screen, please bear with me. We've seen some really interesting sessions before. about integrating physical security or digital certificates into different infrastructures for IoT or for potentially travel documents, I'd like to discuss a little different aspect coming from like a citizen service and how these types of integrations can actually benefit the communities on several different levels. Just to double check, did you see the transition to the second screen? I hope you did. So,
yes,
okay, fantastic.
Yes, we did, Adam. We did, yes.
Great. All right, so as Marcus Mosenbacher mentioned, there have been a really kind of a great drive to different types of solutions that were primarily accelerated by COVID-19. These came across several different applications, not including things like government vaccination type of passes, verification of COVID test results, or even implementation into the supply chain for these types of vaccines. Unfortunately, along with this type of COVID acceleration, we ran into some other types of difficulties throughout the supply chain. So things like the integrated circuits that are used in these were in extreme high demand as consumer buying habits changed, with more people being locked down at home. Their appetite for electronic devices was greatly increased, and the ability to actually dispatch these in the logistics chain was really stressed to the max. So this has been affecting across pretty much every market industry, but specific industries have been hit particularly hard, namely things like the automotive sector, which rely on quite a lot of securing embedded systems with this type of ICs, or in the government ID space, the issuance of electronic passports that bear also the same type of integrated circuits or ID cards that contain these chips were also greatly impacted. So this is basically driving the need towards different types of solutions in things that are potentially converging a physical aspect or token along with a digital credential. And that's actually what I'd like to talk about a bit today, is how these type of citizen digital ID services are becoming an overwhelming market trend. So we see that the various different analyst groups have indicated that 92% of all nations will adopt a national biometric ID system that includes aspects of a unique digital identifier or some type of globally unique identifier, along with some other representation of the demographic data of the citizens. So if we look at this, this really is a tremendous market. And this will represent pretty much 20% growth over the figures. And it's currently a $9 billion industry today. So we see that there are a number of initiatives that are not necessarily tied to COVID-19, but also other type of digitalization initiatives that will really gear this up in the next 8 years, with 2030 being a particularly important target area. So what really kind of drives these type of initiatives? So one of the first questions is like how the governments want to retain control over their own type of solutions. We heard a bit about type of certificate authorities and trusted root providers. Typically, nations want to retain this level of sovereignty over being able to identify their citizens or issue certificates to subordinate agencies, which might then go through and verify other aspects. For example, identify servers, computers, or websites. But the retain of control and that degree of sovereignty is really one of the key drivers. Moreover, countries are wanting to have specific tailor-made requirements to match their existing infrastructure. For example, they may want to deploy things, for example, for automation, for the improving the passenger handling at an airport, or having automated border control crossing gates implemented at the various different points of ingress or egress from their countries. This type of optimization obviously would include measures of cost effectiveness. So by being able to implement these type of machine automation solutions, it will lower the overall total expense, and it can also help to encourage interagency cooperation. For example, a unique digital identifier that could be used to identify a government ministry, for example, for the inland revenue or the tax authorities, could also be shared with other agencies, for example, like a social security or pension benefit, with one unique identifier. This could be stored digitally in a cloud or online, or also written to a secure element that would be inside an ID card or passport. With this, the governments then could have a greater degree of agility so that they can basically implement a wide number of different types of solutions that are based on the type of standards that they have chosen. So this gives them a much greater degree of flexibility than they could when they were living in an analog world of only using security printed documents to identify citizens. So this transition really is moving forward at great pace. However, we see that most of the governments are really still immature in the technology that they're particularly using. So, for example, these are maybe coming from paper-based ledgers or systems that have no machine-readable aspects. A good example would be a driving license, or, for example, a voter ID card. These are typically delivered in silos by different operators. For example, the driving license or vehicle registration has no idea of me being a voter or my ability to vote in a particular local or regional election. So we see that there are many initiatives that are trying to drive cooperation between these. In fact, there are some interesting platforms like the MOSIP, the Modular Open Source Identity Platform, or from the Secure Identity Alliance, the Open Standards Identity APIs, that are really trying to encourage this type of cooperation and interoperability by providing the ability to share federated data between different agencies. So for example, a law enforcement agent might be able to check my ability to operate a motor vehicle, but they might not necessarily have the same level of access to see, have I paid my taxes on time with the inland revenue authorities? So in this case, the world is really looking towards a few sort of digital ID innovators, countries such as Estonia that have a XRED blockchain-based backend system, or India, where there are some biometric digital IDs based on MOSIP that are kind of being used as guidance for these new international standards. So we see that moving towards the digital is really at the heart of these different type of public plans. This is true in governments in the United States and North America, as well as inside Europe. And it's also being championed by the various different international aid agencies like the UN or the World Bank. So they're able to implement things in a way that's basically privacy-centric, making sure that the individual needs of the citizen are taken into account as they're building these types of infrastructures, basing it on mature, robust type of technology that's already been proven in field, and making sure that we're able to implement a public-private partnership to enable that the private partners are able to deliver technology into the public sphere to help attain those type of national sovereignty goals. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what the type of citizen digital ID would represent and how this is really an evolution of the ID ecosystem. In this case, we can take a look at the sort of life cycle of what a digital society would need or expect to do online. So first off, we would expect that we would need to prove our identity. So this is quite common to most forward-facing use case that you would see. If I want to open a new bank, the bank has a know your customer type of requirement that I need to go through, prove my identity with a high degree of assurance that I am indeed the applicant for a bank account. Moreover, I would also need to be able to maintain this type of personal data in the event that I have some type of significant life change. For example, I get married and now have a spouse, or I have a child. I would need to be able to update this type of identity data in a secure fashion. Moreover, I would have the expectation of being able to communicate this securely in a way that would prove my privacy, as well as make sure that this is only being attended by the specific recipient that I am believing I'm communicating with. If I have these things in place, this obviously would reduce the distance I would have between the access services that the government would provide. So this would basically entitle me to be able to receive things like benefits, for example, a pension, perhaps an agricultural subsidy for a farmer, or the like. As we move further in the maturity model, we could have a greater degree of expectation of other services. I would want to be able to transact online, i.e. pay for things in digital commerce, or vote online. And finally, I would need to be able to sign some type of document to show that I'm actually attesting to, yes, I consent to this, I can prove my identity and to do this. So this is really driving the whole idea of mobility, and we've seen that this type of world is possible with the convergence of both digital and hardware-based technologies. So looking at that, we can imagine a world where governments are able to better serve their citizens. This would actually effectively increase public funding by basically reducing the costs for duplicate projects, reducing the maintenance of data in multiple different types of silos, and really improve the public efficiency. And ultimately, it would engender a greater degree of absolute trust between the governments as well as the citizens themselves. So in this case, we see that many governments are moving towards this type of model. 65% of governments have already deployed data platforms to date in 2022, and 50% of those will have roles that necessarily haven't been created yet. I.e., there will be an evolving type of IT and knowledge workforce that will basically be transitioning to the digitalization of this type of data. So this is really a great opportunity for governments to sort of revolutionize the way that they are delivering services for their citizens. In this aspect, it can really help them develop their economies. Private providers are also help to build a more sustainable future, and it can really help to increase the actual security through aspects of homeland security, cyber defense, and this is ultimately all entitled to help serve the citizens better. When we talk about this as a driver for digital change, we can look here in the EU itself, and we can see that there is this idea of a 2030 digital compass. And so this is a idea proposed by the various different EU member states. We want to create a climate neutral, recycling-oriented, resilient economy by the year 2030. So within the next 8 years, we want to move forward towards this model where 100% of public services will be available online. These type of availability for medical records and individual patient data will also be accessible. And they want to have 80% of the population being able to use a digital ID in the next 8 years. So this obviously has big impact on the infrastructures that are being deployed. So having 5G networks everywhere, gigabit Ethernet, physical connectivity in metropolitan area networks, and even in rural areas. And of course, being able to implement this at a very, I would say, trusted hardware level. So being able to integrate semiconductors and integrated circuit chips throughout the aspect, from the identity documents to the actual consumer devices that we're using, as well as in the data centers that are driving this. So when we look at this, the EU has come up with the idea of a specific digital rights and principles notion that with the people at the center, they're driving this type of inclusion because they think that the technology there should be a kind of uniting force and not divide the people. We've seen that when technology is not necessarily implemented correctly or with a lot of foresight, that it can actually be a dividing factor. In fact, this was really brought to light with the sort of COVID restrictions, where people who had a digital credential and can prove their vaccination status or prove that they had a negative test result had a significantly greater degree of freedom in their travel and ability to, just participate in daily life than those who were not able to participate because they didn't have this type of digital credential or prove their vaccination or negative COVID status. Further, this gives citizens a greater degree of choice in being able to make sure they're able to participate in fair online activities and be protected from illegal and harmful content. Moreover, we believe that the transition to digital services should support sustainability and the sort of green transition at this. To help kind of measure this, the EU has come up with the notion of a digital economy society index. This DESI index, you can see that there's still quite a lot of work to go. Some of the areas within the EU, for example, in the Scandinavian areas and Denmark, Finland, Sweden, they have a really high degree of connectivity. They have a high degree of integration of digital services that are already available. And we can see that that this is really kind of a great, I would say, democratizer for these societies. Places like Estonia, citizens, in fact, up to 1/4 of all the citizens actually voted online in the most recent elections, which they see as a great degree of sort of inclusion for that. But the journey towards these type of digital citizens IDs is just starting. When we look at the sort of world figures, only 50% of nations have documented IDs, and that's for less than 40% of the population. The World Bank estimate that currently there are over 1.1 billion people who have no access to formal identity documents. When we put this into consideration, only 30% of nations have a sort of unique national identifier or civil registry, and many of these have no digital IDs yet. So they're still locked in these sort of legacy, very analog, paper-driven processes. And finally, we can see that of these nations, 20% still have siloed IDs and no way to unify the sharing of data inter-agency. So we can consider some of the kind of roadblocks that having a hybrid or digital technology can help us solve. First off, the complexity of having a legacy paper process. This is a very slow, it moves at the speed of snail mail, and is really not necessarily the best way for encouraging different type of interagency cooperation. Moreover, because they're paper processes, they're typically based on things that are really proprietary or not easily replicatable solutions, or they're very specific to things that might not be sovereign to the control of the government. And finally, because of that, we haven't seen a lot of use cases that are kind of leveraging these types of identification drivers. So we want to challenge this notion and say, how can we move forward to a digital native sovereign idea where citizens can have really a citizen-focused identity strategy? So by pairing a unique digital identifier along with a hardware-enhanced security credential, we can really make a very highly secure system that is both very interoperable and serving the basis of the customers. This could be used as a way for accessing governmental services, enable them for border control or transit authorities, access commercial services and conform to to know your customer requirements or anti-money laundering type of legislation, and of course be a big driver for other type of civil uses like banking, public health, or the like. As for one of the sort of leading vendors, CryptoVision and Atos are helping countries deliver these type of projects. So we have a completely integrated solution stack that enables the sort of convergence between digital identity products, the electronic ID products using these type of integrated circuit cards like passports, ID cards, biometric systems, and providing a big public identification platform. In fact, we're one of the leading vendors for the type of MOSIP integration, and we're the #1 European vendor in digital identification services. We have the technology to do this both for the existing generation of identity documents, as well as preparing for those of the future, including aspects for physical hardware security modules that are driving things like blockchain and other type of self-sovereign identity initiatives. So looking at that, Atos as a solution provider can help you with your digital identity services, digital identity solutions, and digital identity products to put those together to basically create a fully integrated solution that can help you leverage both public and civil use cases for that. Just to kind of compare and contrast that between what a digital ID or a traditional ID card could do versus an integrated digital or eID, we see that a traditional paper printed security document is very weak. Typically, it doesn't work very well offline because it's highly susceptible to forgery, it's prone to loss or theft, and it's overall difficult to keep this working and to integrate this with automated type of solutions or being able to do these things online. By integrating this with a sort of a digital ID platform, this can enable strong authentication, including biometrics with face, fingerprint, or iris recognition. It significantly reduces the amount of risk or fraud. And from this sort of single source, it really can drive a new degree of ease of access to services from different citizens. Just looking at some of the areas where Atos have done these types of projects, we're delivering both electronic ID projects or completely digital ID projects all around the world. We see that there's a kind of a unique mix between the challenges from emerging markets where we might have no legacy systems to integrate, for example, in projects like Morocco, or elsewhere, where we're delivering a complete digital ID solution along with some of our other biometric partners. Finally, how can we basically assist you? We can do this several different ways, either with a sort of one-on-one hour workshop. We could do it with a more intense 2-day innovation workshop, or government agencies can often go through for a very intensive type of 3-month pilot to trial these solutions. So that is the end of my presentation. I believe there might have been some questions raised in the QA. If not, I'm happy to turn it over to Steve and let him moderate those.
There were indeed some questions that came in. I'll just read them out to you then,
Sure.
in case other people have not seen them. Considering the complexity of ID management, how do you overcome the issue of duplication, expiration, and change?
So this is really one of the fundamental challenges in addressing these types of silos of data. And this is being tackled by a number of different initiatives. There's one based around the MOSIP platform, the sort of modular open source identity platform, which basically is trying to create a sort of unique digital identifier for the citizens. This would then be used as a sort of an anchor for various different other silos to connect and to do some type of data assessments against that. So rather than having a unique identity in the inland revenue or financial system, and a separate identity in the voting system, and a third different unique identifier in the pension system, all of these would be tied back to a unique digital identifier that can be there. So this creates this type of opportunity to greatly reduce the possibility of duplicate data. Moreover, this would enable something like a civil registry to trigger a particular event. For example, I unfortunately pass away. This would then say, hey, the civil registry sets my status to deceased, and this would prevent me from collecting, for example, a retirement or pension benefit from these other agencies. So it's not a simple challenge, but it is something that the technology is already there in place for. And with a skilled type of system integration, these type of government agencies can really benefit from it.
Okay. I also, okay. Privacy and data provenance seems to be a major issue. How is this overcome?
So the challenge of making a privacy-centric model first is really one of the key struggles, because this technology by its very nature, especially biometric technology, is extremely unique to the citizen. It's extremely sensitive in the fact that it cannot be changed or altered to a significant degree easily. And therefore, if it's not properly checked, it could be really invasive. So in this case, they're looking at implementing sort of what they call good ID systems. And there's many organizations which are driving towards this. So in particular, the ID 2020 initiative is a kind of a unique mix of public consortia along with private technology partners who are going through and being able to do some type of vetting to say, hey, these are really well implemented ID projects. These we would recommend as a use as a sort of pilot or to model your ID project on. And one of the first and foremost criteria is does this really recognize the privacy of the citizen? Is this something that they can retain sovereign control over their identity data? And do they provide mechanisms to consent to be able to share this data and only to specific providers? This is also something that's mirrored currently in the EU right now, as they have this idea of self-sovereign identity. And there are several sort of current ongoing working groups which are delivering solutions to be able to make sure that the citizens themselves can retain control over their identity data.
Final one, does the centralized ID create a security risk?
Well, on one hand, yes, it does represent a potential security risk. But on the other hand, by centralizing these type of ID platforms, it also gives you a greater degree to control the actual degree of risk. If we look at the classic mechanisms for trust service providers, things like trusted root certificate authorities or identity issuing agencies coming from, for example, the government, whether it's a foreign ministry who's granting you a passport or ability to travel, or from the civil registry giving you an ID card to prove them. The fact that there are very strong controls that are implemented at this very high level means it helps to mitigate that risk. So you can have a very well-trusted system, but it can be, I would say, secured with the degree of control that government agencies or really trusted third-party providers that have to meet very high, there's the cat showing up, have to meet a very high degree of accreditation and certification requirements for.
Okay, we're going to have to move on. I still have another question, which I believe you should also be able to see in your system. But so because we're a little pressed for time now, I'm going to ask Adam if you wouldn't mind answering that.
No problem. I'd be happy to
within the chat group. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you, Adam.
It was a pleasure.
Our last presenter. We always leave the best till last. I'm looking forward to this. This is biometrics for seamless travel. So let's going to hand this over to you.
Yes, thank you. Let's start to share. So I hope you can see the presentation. Warm welcome from my side to the audience. Let's talk about today trend of seamless travel via the usage of biometric token. Yes, where we are with this traveling and using biometric token, in special for the border management, for the immigration process. Everyone is familiar with electronic machine-readable travel documents based on the international standards defined by the UN International Civil Aviation Organization, published in 2021. In the document, so-called ICAO 9303, 8 editions. According to the company Read ID, in April 2020, nearly 160 states had issued a passport with a contactless chip. Those e-passports can be used to enable traveling by using self-services such as an e-kiosk for check-in, baggage drop-off, security check, immigration, and boarding. However, the more convenient solution is seamless travel via the use of secure digital token of a traveler. For such scenario, in the 2021, ICAO published also the so-called guiding core principles for the development of digital travel credentials. In simple words, the chip data from a physical e-passport are transferred to a digital representation on a mobile device like a smartphone. Beside this guideline, the standard ISO 18013-5, published in 2020, defines the implementation of mobile driving license on the mobile device. Both standards can be used to interact between a mobile device and the automated border control solution contactless and seamlessly. To verify the travelers, the most common biometric modality is a face image, because face images of the travelers are stored in so-called data group 2 of the logical data structure defined in the ICAO 9303 standard. We observe a trend towards a second biometric modality, either iris or touchless fingerprint. New technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning are the basis to enhancing the traveling verification with additional biometric modalities like voice or behavior. First concepts of such system called biometric corridors are in development. Camera systems recognize the face image of the traveler and compare it with the digitalized data on the mobile device while the traveler is working to the immigration area. The International Air Transport Association, called IATA, has defined such a concept, for example, where Mühlbauer is working in the IATA 1ID working group. This concept stands for seamless, efficient, and secure process during passenger facilitation. All the solutions are based on identity management solution that ensure a unique identity management by a government authority and the issuance of trustworthy and secure identity documents, including the defined biometrics. That we also heard in the presentation from CryptoVision authors. The biometric information, which is stored in the physical and digitalized travel documents, is defined by the government because there's a legal framework. This leads to the use of different biometrics modalities. However, the international standards guarantees the interoperability and that the data is secured by digital signature. Mühlbauer provides a comprehensive solution that enables governments to build up a complete new digitalized identity management solution or transfer an existing solution to a new generation. As we also heard today, there are different initiatives like OSIA from Secure Identity Alliance or MOSIP, as well the ID 2020. Obviously, the future digitalization of government processes enables a new self-service 24 hours, 7 days a week. On the one hand. On the other hand, based on cryptographic algorithm, the personal data, including the biometric information, is digitally signed by a standardized public key infrastructure. This prevents potential identity misuse, reduce crimes like human smuggling, and increasing mobility. At the same time, it improves social participation and efficiency of the offered service. And now, welcome to the Mühlbauer Secure ID ecosystem, the seamless travel solution by privacy by design and according to the international standards. What is needed to establish such a system? Of course, we need a physical electronic machine-readable document, we need a mobile app, we need a self-service kiosk, an automated border control solution, and a so-called public key infrastructure. How does it work? The trust anchor is the issued electronic machine-readable travel document, like an e-passport or an eID card. The most common biometrics modality is the face image of the traveler. The mobile app stores the private data in a secure way. Furthermore, the mobile app is designed to store additional information like boarding pass and baggage tag. The first step is a digital transfer of the chip data to the mobile app by using a self-service kiosk in an attended environment like a government service center. During access to the physical document, the digital credentials are verified. Person verification is executed based on the face image, and the digital representation on the mobile devices is digitally signed by using a government PKI. Such a solution is scalable if you use several kiosks in parallel in order to reduce queues. For automated border control solution, an upgrade with low energy Bluetooth technology is needed to communicate with mobile devices over the distance of up to 3 meters. For the traveler, the communication ensures a hands-free and contactless immigration process. The immigration authority can future automate the process and accelerate the immigration process while keeping the same security level. Immigration officer can focus more on the behavior of the suspicious persons and objects. For this purpose, we at Mühlbauer recommend and offer solutions for complete mobile document and person verification in online and offline mode. It's also available on a desktop solution as well on the mobile device. Based on privacy by design, we have developed a seamless travel solution by using biometric tokens such as face image, or also iris or touchless fingerprints. We are proud to take our government customers' established immigration process to the next level, to securing the process, reducing misuse, and making travelers happy. I hope this was in short words, very quick to hold the timeline. My presentation. Thank you very much for the audience. I give back to Stephen.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Quick.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. You're a star. You're a star.
No,
a lot of this, though. What kind of time frame do you see for this being rolled out on a far greater scale in the future? I mean, we're talking years or decades.
So what we see in the market, first projects already started. So that means in the next 3-5 years, this will be a rollout worldwide. And it started already in America, will go to Europe, and we see very developed space in Asia because a lot of travelers there still after COVID. And the benefits for the immigration and the airport suppliers are they're using more or less the same space what they have, and increase really the efficiency and increase more or less also the security, because when you automated all this process, the officer get tired after 6-8 hours, but the device can run 24 hours, 7 days all the time. So, and that's why it is, of course, as we heard today, an investment, but investment, security, efficiency, make the traveler happy, all this should be considered, and that's why we believe that this will come in the next 2-3 years, definitely. And digital ID, by the way, it's already started, European Union working on it, and will replace, from our point of view, also the national ID documents in the next 5-6 years. But the e-passport will stay the next 20-30 years. It's our observation.
Okay. So, as you said, they don't get tired, and also they don't go on strike either.
Yes. And get not sick. It's also a very important aspect here in Germany and in the States. Yes.
Yeah. Lutz, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And in fact, that's the end of our Silicon Trust ID Technologist seminar. Please join me in thanking Oliver Witzenried, Gunther Fischer, Markus Musenbacher, Per Engard, and Lutz Richter and Adam Ross for speaking here today. Now, as I mentioned at the start, the presentations will be available on the Silicon Trust website from the 21st of October, as will be a recording of this seminar as well. And all attendees will receive an email thanking them for watching today and a URL to find and download the presentations. And also, while you're on our site, don't forget to download our latest Vault magazine, and our next one will be out in a month's time. Should you have any further questions to the presenters today, please do not hesitate to contact me through the Silicon Trust website, and I'll put you in touch with the relevant presenter directly. Now, as I said, this is the last of our seminar series for 2022. I hope you've enjoyed them and found them interesting and useful. And with that, and on behalf of my fellow presenters, I want to thank you for your interest and time in today's seminar. And until next time, thank you and goodbye.